All right, so we are here in New Echota. New Echota was the Cherokee capital here in Georgia, and it's a pretty cool place. Give you a quick panoramic view here. That was the meeting house where their legislative branch met to make the laws. There would have been farms, there would have been houses. It was divided up into 1 acre lots, a lot like a neighborhood or a community would be today. Really flat, which is pretty amazing. Over here, this white building, that's where their Supreme Court would have met, because they did have a judicial branch. Because remember, their constitution, their government was set up very similar to the United States Constitution and government. Kind of same separation of powers, checks and balances and everything. Pretty neat. You can't really see it here, and I was hoping that you could. But that building there is where the Cherokee Phoenix would have been printed. That would have been the newspaper that they would have had for the community to kind of do their thing with and learn and get some education from. But anyway, pretty neat. Again, this is where the Treaty of New Echota would have been signed. They ended up selling all those Cherokee lands to the federal government, signed by Major Ridge, approved by the Senate. Of course, Andrew Jackson really liked it, which eventually does lead to the Trail of Tears. But anyway, New Echota, pretty cool. As we talked about, Worcester lived over that way in the woods. He was the Worcester versus Georgia court case where the Supreme Court said, hey, Cherokee, you don't have to move, independent nation. And then Andrew Jackson ignores it and completely does away with checks and balances for a little while. But anyway, again, this is where they would have met with their legislative branch, and just a pretty cool little place up here in the Blue Ridge, the Ridge and Valley section of Georgia. So we're here outside of New Echota, which is in the Ridge and Valley region, and we know that's the Cherokee capital. This house over here is where Samuel Worcester lived. He was the missionary who worked alongside the Cherokee, and he was told to move out of the Cherokee territory because he didn't have a permit from the state of Georgia. Worcester refused. He was arrested. He actually spent 2 years in jail before being freed. Supreme Court, Worcester versus Georgia, comes in and says that the Cherokee are their own independent sovereign nation, and therefore Worcester, he doesn't have to leave, right? That's the long and short of it. Andrew Jackson, as we know, he ignores it. He says John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. And because it's not the job of the Supreme Court to enforce laws, that's the executive branch, the ruling didn't get enforced, and we know that the Cherokee were rounded up. About 250 yards this way would have been where Fort Wool was. Fort Wool was used to house Cherokee people that they were going to remove before sending them up the road to Chattanooga to Ross's Landing, where some of them would have taken a riverboat further west, and some also would have traveled on from there. Anyway, they would have been held there, not good conditions, until they went on the road. Anyway, pretty interesting stuff. Again, Worcester or Worcester, I have trouble with that, versus Georgia. This is where that guy lived, and set some pretty cool precedent, but obviously wasn't followed by the president. Pretty neat. Back here again at New Echota, and I wanted to point out, this is a Cherokee town, right? But when we're looking around, there's a lot of structures that we wouldn't necessarily associate with Native Americans. That's because the Cherokee had done a really good job of assimilation, or taking on the characteristics of another culture. So they had started farming. We talked about their government. Their houses would have looked very similar to that of other settlers at the time. Actually, according to the source that you look at, Chief Van in the early 1800s was a Cherokee chief, and he was one of the richest, if not the richest person on the east coast of the United States at the time. He owned a lot of land in this Cherokee territory, enslaved a lot of people, very successful businessman because of that, and just, again, the assimilation, the education that he had gotten as he had kind of taken part in and accepted some of that more European culture. But again, assimilation is all around. It's basically no different when it comes to structures and lifestyles than most settlements and towns would have been further east of here, not in Cherokee land or Indian territory.